Hey, good morning, church. Hope you guys are having a great morning so far. So we're studying through the book of Daniel, and we are into Daniel chapter 8 today. And honestly, Daniel chapter 8, it's a rough chapter. So we see this vision, and that's what we start out with. So this vision is going on, and then at the end of the chapter, we see kind of an interpretation of the vision. And as we see in the chapter before, chapter 7, we have kind of a similar structure, right? And so as we go through this, I'm just going to kind of give you what's going on. I'm not going to try to interpret it. It's not my position. And so, as we start off, the vision, so it's called the vision of a ram and a goat. So starting off, we see that in verse 1, it says, "In the 3rd year of King Belshazzar's reign, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, after the one that had appeared to me earlier." So this vision is of, so he sees this vision of a giant ram, and this ram is just so powerful and destroying everything. There's nothing that can stop this ram, and it's huge, and it's going, west, east, north, south. It's going everywhere, and it's destroying everything, right? And then we get into verse 5, and it says, "As I was observing, a male goat appeared, coming from the west across the surface of the entire earth without touching the ground. The goat had a conspicuous horn between his eyes." So after we see, after he talks about this ram, he talks about this giant goat. And this goat has one horn coming between its eyes, and it comes and it just destroys this ram. Like, no doubt about it. There's no question, no fight. He just destroys this ram. And, after that, we get into verse 8. So this goat destroys the ram, right? And verse 8 says, "Then the male goat became very great, but when he became powerful, the large horn was shattered. 4 conspicuous horns came up in its place, pointing toward the 4 winds of heaven." And so that one horn falls off, and then 4 horns take its place, right? And so then we keep going, and verses 9 through 14 talk about one of the horns. And says, verse 9 says, "From one of them a little horn emerged and grew extensively toward the south and the east and toward the beautiful land." So it starts talking about one of the horns in that little scripture, right? And so, the first part is the vision. And then we get into verse 15, where we start to see the interpretation of the vision. Verse 15 says, "While I, Daniel, was watching the vision and trying to understand it, there stood before me someone who appeared to be a man." Verse 16 says, "I heard a human voice calling from the middle of the ulai. Gabriel explained the vision to this man." So we see that Daniel was confused. He's seeing all this. He's like, what does this mean, right? And then Gabriel comes in and starts to explain it to him. And so, as you continue reading through this, it starts to describe, how we kind of see the end times. This is a representation of the end times. There's certain countries, like verse 20 says, "The 2-horned ram that you saw represents the kings of Media and Persia. The shaggy goat represents the king of Greece, and the large horn between his eyes represents the first king." And so all of these, the ram, the goat, the horns, they all have a certain representation. And then verse 23 through 26 is talking about the end times, and talking about the Antichrist, and talking about things that are going to happen at the end. And, like I said, I was just going to give you a real quick run through of it, because if we look at verse 27 says, "I, Daniel, was overcome and lay sick for days." So after he saw this vision, he was overcome and he lay sick just because of this vision, right? And then it says, "And then I got up and went about the king's business. I was greatly disturbed by the vision and could not understand it." And so, we have the whole picture. We have the whole Bible, and it's easier for us to understand things. But, as we go throughout this vision and you try and interpret it the way that, God meant it to be, even Daniel couldn't understand it. Even after Gabriel explained it to Daniel, he said he couldn't understand it. And so, reading through this, it's crazy, because I would be disturbed if I saw this too, just like Daniel was. And so, as we go throughout this, try and listen to God and try and get the certain verses that speak out to you. So, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. God bless.